All right, good afternoon, Bitcoins. Welcome back. We had a great time this morning. Caught some food on the back of the boat in the port, I think. Not the starboard. No, it's the stern, aft. The aft and the stern, not the bow. You have to learn all your nautical terms when you're on a boat. It's very important, otherwise you'll get lost. Your muster station, yes. But it's great to be back here. We're going to introduce Gabriel D. Vine, my friend from the World Crypto Network. We've done shows together for years and years, but we just met recently, so we never met in person before this cruise, so that's pretty fun. I got to meet Gabe. And usually Gabriel's playing a piano or doing some kind of music criticism, so hopefully there'll be some music here, although I don't see a piano.
I can dance, but I don't have any music for my dance.
Oh, there we go. There's a keyboard right there. We might have to pull that out later. I saw a drum set. We'll get Gabriel going. We'll quiz him on some music. But here's Gabriel D. Vine. He's going to talk about Bitcoin, the meme, and what is Bitcoin culture. Here it is.
Wow.
Testing. Thanks for coming, everyone. Hello. All right. So my talk, as you can see, is called The Bitcoin Meme. And first, before I start, I want to just say, don't wait for the end for questions. If anything is confusing or you're not sure what the heck's going on or I'm going too fast, raise your hand or just yell out and I'll clear it right up.
What the hell are you doing here?
Well, Ugly asked me to come and talk about Bitcoin. And I was very flattered, and I said yes. And I'm very stoked to be here right now. Thank you so much for having me. My talk, as Thomas mentioned, is exploring Bitcoin culture. Bitcoin is a tool, obviously, and this technology protocol. We all talk about Bitcoin a lot in this room, think about it, and tend to focus in on details. Our culture is very analytical. With analysis. Analysis is actually breaking apart. It's the opposite of synthesis. So, in our culture, we're very into exploring the details of things, and Bitcoin is no exception. And I do find that the big picture often gets lost, and I try to focus on that in my appearances on the internet, on YouTube, on various channels, including with Thomas, who invited me for my first real, YouTube appearance 5 years ago. I'm very grateful to him for that. So I always enjoy bringing in the bigger picture, talking about society at large, talking about culture at large. And my talk today is exploring that. So first of all, in order to discuss Bitcoin culture, I want to come back to communications. Bitcoin is a communications protocol, and it's part of a long tradition of millennia of advancing communications technology in human society on Earth. In 500 BC, the postal service became widespread throughout Eurasia. This idea of a specific core system in the society that's organized in order to move messages from one place to another. Instead of just sending runners like earlier societies did, there was an organized system around it, and that really enabled the rise of the giant empires that we've had on this planet for over 2,000 years. Jump forward a couple thousand years, and the printing press, very famous time, around 1400. This idea of bringing communications to more people, and it was absolutely transformed the intellectual landscape, brought us the Renaissance in Europe and in Asia too. On the Chinese side, they decided to stop exploring as much around that time, so it's more of a European dominant colonial system that kind of arose over the next few hundred years. By 1850, we had electric devices, and it was the electric age, the invention of the telegraph. We haven't actually really advanced our speed since around 1850. The telegraph was already moving close to the speed of light on copper wires, right? Well, I guess not the speed of light, but optical. It took another 150 years to really get the optical, but still, it's not all that much faster. You could move messages around in seconds from town to town. 1920, the telephone, real time, a few hundred miles away, you could talk to somebody. That really sped things up. The ideas are flowing around so much faster in the 20th century. 80 years later, the mature internet backbone was kind of set in the West and began spreading to other parts of the world. And over this century, so far, we've had quite a bit of fleshing out of this internet. The faster the communications, the more virally powerful the spread of ideas is through culture. So that's enabled this development through faster communications has enabled the spread of ideas. So, what is culture? Here's a little meme to talk about it. Well, the famous researcher Csikszentmihalyi talked about flow, which is a great thing. I was flow when I'm DJing or the music. He also talked about a lot of other amazing things. He described it as the symbolic knowledge shared by a particular society or by humanity as a whole. Symbolic knowledge includes ideas, processes. So ideas is, things in your head, right? Anything new. Processes, that could be making cheese. It could be making tanks. It could be the idea of a corporation as a process, business, commerce, anything. Dude, why isn't it working? Products. These are the actual things you make. So the process of making cheese is part of culture, but also the cheese itself. Tanks, whatever, products. It's very general. So now in culture, we've got this thing called creativity, which is when new things happen, right? What is creativity? This guy, Csikszentmihalyi, came up with this chart here, where there's culture and the domains of culture on the top. That's everybody. And then there's the new people. They come up with these new ideas. They produce the novelty. So that the information is transmitted to individuals. They come up with new ideas. That gets pushed through society and the gatekeeper, so people who are evaluating the ideas, they select the new ideas, the novelty, and that gets appropriated by the cultural domains again. Now, the domain, I just described that. Okay, so here we go. Boom, person, and field. So the person comes up with new ideas, but new ideas need to be selected, right? We come up with new stuff, but it doesn't enter the fold until people decide, hey, stop it. All right. So Velikovsky, very amazing thinker, and we'll be talking more about him in a bit. Here's an example. This is the exact same chart, but specifically applied to the film industries. Just to give you an example, the domain is films, books, courses, knowledge. Individuals are writers, and filmmakers are coming up with the original ideas. But from there, you got to go into the industry, audience, critics, studios. They're actually selecting the ideas, making them, making sure everything that people are deciding that they like it. And that's when it re-enters the domain later on. So we come up with these. We like our films. Thomas and I talk about movies and books a lot. So what exactly are these packets of information? So I'm saying, there's a new idea and it's moving along these yellow arrows, right? What are those, right? What are these packets of information in culture? The analogy is really with life forms, right? Life forms communicate their new features through genes. That's genetics. So in culture, what's the stuff that's moving between these three things? The answer is memes. Now, keep in mind this term meme is much larger than this idea of the image meme. This is a word that was appropriated for this particular thing, but it's actually a much older concept and much more general concept, so keep that in mind. Richard Dawkins coined the term meme. He was trying to make a comparison analogy to genetics. In his book, The Selfish Gene, he was talking about genetics, and he was thinking about, ideas kind of combine, and he was kind of vaguely thinking about it in that way, and he coined this term meme to as an analogy in culture, it's like a gene of culture, a meme. In the 80s, you had thank you. So yeah, Dawkins also coined the term ideasphere. That's the space of all ideas, and a meme is the gene of it contains the information for the ideasphere. What's up with this?
Yeah, I think it's better. We're getting another one.
All right. Douglas Hofstadter in the 80s, amazing thinker, talked about recursion and computing and all sorts of stuff in the 70s and 80s, very influential. He was describing, this idea of the memes combine into something called schemes, right? These are these larger structures of different ideas that you combine together, or the memeplex. Go forward. It's a unit of social cultural information, the meme. It's a unit. It's a unit of socio-cultural information. And forward. The memetics is this term that was, once again, a comparison to genetics. In the 80s, they came up with this idea, we're going to study ideas and we're going to study culture like we study genetics, but it really didn't, it was just vague, it was ambiguous. And in 2009, Steven Pinker actually pointed out that memetics had not had its Watson-Crick moment of figuring out the structure of the DNA. In the 50s, they figured, these gene things, I see how it works, it's all these molecules working. They hadn't figured that out yet. But this is very recent now. In 2013, Velikovsky wrote this article, it's amazing. Go ahead. Where he said the structure of the meme is the holon. Now, the holon is an idea that Velikovsky appropriated to describe the meme, but basically, a holon is something that is simultaneously a whole and a part. This is the guy Kostler in the 60s came up with this idea. It's in this case, two. Combining two, so the whole has two inside of it, each of those has two, and each of those has two, and so forth. Side view, you can see it's structured, you combine two and two and two and two, and you go up and down, it's fractal structure. And Velikovsky appropriated the word parton as well. So is it the battery? Is that the story?
I think that's what it is.
Okay, I'm going forward here. It's a whole and a part. And a parton is this idea from physics of these little points. And the idea is that it's a whole and a part at the same time. So Velikovsky called it a holon parton. It's getting a little cut off there on the right. Can we move to the left? Oh well. All right. So, meanwhile, holon partons are artifacts. They can be universes, galaxies, solar systems, planets, atoms, hadrons, quarks, animals, plants, cells. Also cultural objects or artifacts, memes, ideas, products, processes that are simultaneously apart and also whole at the same time. Memes as holon partons encapsulate many established labels such as tropes, motifs, patterns, themes, configurations, complexes, ideas, beliefs, values, rules, principles, symbols, and concepts. This is such a general idea. That's the idea, is they wanted to figure out this structure generally. And so what exactly is the structure? You've got this holon parton. It's fractal. It's two ideas, right? We had that chart with the two inside of it. Old meme, Venn diagram. The overlap between the two old memes is a new meme. It's just simply a combination of two ideas. The new meme is a combination of two ideas. Two other memes. The new idea solves problems or is novel and appropriate. In other words, people are selecting it because it's useful to them. They're like, this new thing, it's totally useful. So now, let's talk about how holons or memes work together. This is another Kostler term. And the idea is that they form a type of hierarchy. But the hierarchies are also a whole and a part at the same time. Once again, it's very fractal. The three laws of holarchies, or holarchy-partarchy, because it's a whole and a part. Memes, or nodes. In this case, you have a non-cultural holarchy. This is actually the holarchy of the solar system, right? So it starts at the Higgs boson, at the tiniest level we know about in mainstream physics, going up through the sizes of, I've got the pointer. Going up through the sizes of things, it goes up through, this is going through human beings, right? Organelles, cells, tissues, organs, person, family, community, city, town, state, nation, country, continent, biosphere, solar system. all of these items combine with each other to form the whole. The wholes look up for what they need to integrate with, and they look down to command and control. So cells are controlling the organelles are controlling molecules are controlling the atoms. And then they look sideways for competition and also cooperation. The cells are competing with each other, or they're cooperating with each other, hopefully, in our bodies. So that's this idea of a holarchy. It's a naturally forming hierarchy of these nodes. Some examples of holon-parton holarchies. This is a novel, right? Ideas combined to form letters, words, sentences, paragraphs, chapters, novel. Here we start from ideas and go a different direction: letters, words, verse, chorus, bridge, song lyrics. Right? We see how it's a hierarchy where the lower levels form the higher levels. Scientific paradigm. Once again, starting at ideas: facts, laws, phenomena, theories, meta theory. Scientific paradigm. Phonemes, morphemes, words, sentences, speech. Right? So that's a little bit of a different hierarchy. Wow, I'm getting dizzy here. Woo, boy. Okay. Get my equilibrium back for a second. So, let's come back to creativity for a second. I know this is very general. It's going to become more concrete soon. Holon-partons, and therefore memes, emerge in culture when they're created via the evolutionary paradigm algorithm. Once again, we're coming back to genetics, right? Evolutionary algorithm. What is that? Selection. The genes are selected. Variation. The genes change over time, but only a little bit. And they're transmitted with heredity. This has to do with time. From one generation to the next, the genes stay the same, but they get varied slightly. When they get selected, those variations are selected over time. That's evolutionary algorithm, evolutionary epistemology. Velikovsky connected them up. Why I study cultural evolution, genes are not the only inheritance system. So in other words, we're inheriting our culture from our forebears and we're passing it on to our descendants. The meme, once again, is the unit of culture. Cultural evolution is the process of these memes being selected. That's why they're the unit. These are the ones that the memes are what we pay attention to. We're deciding whether to use it, whether to think about it, whether to pass it on to others, whether to share it. Memes compete in the human mind. So technically we're choosing them, but as a shorthand we can say that memes are actually competing in the idea sphere with each other. The ideas are competing for dominance in our attention. And transmission happens when we copy memes, but we vary them. And once again, we combine memes and find a new one in the overlap between them. Memes combine and evolve over time. I mean, really it's us selecting them, but you can look at it similarly to genes where they're actually evolving amongst themselves, because they sort of have a sort of intelligence of their own, really. So, coming back to image memes, this is the slang internet term that we're very familiar with.
I made that thumbnail.
You made it?
Yeah.
That is awesome, yeah. I randomly found that because I was so good.
Thanks.
So I'm going to delve into image memes a bit. This is a little bit of a detour, but they're very fun. So the image meme is, they've appropriated this old term from the 70s to describe the image memes that we're all familiar with. Now this talk is really more about the other type of meme, the general cultural meme, but we might as well talk about image memes too. What is an image meme? The term meme has been co-opted in NetSpeak to describe a tiny, typical subset of the actual word meaning of meme. The image meme is a particularly effective combination of images and words ideally suited to the digital age, allowing for near-instant understanding of a concept that generally includes an idea's history and a specific perspective on it. An image meme is usually ironic and humorous, but with a key kernel of truth, illuminating the idea in a new, particularly resonant way. Once again, it's the combination of known elements in a new way. Now, an image meme doesn't necessarily need to have that block text on it. It can just be an image like this, for example. This is the NPC meme. It's usually the picture is unvaried anyways in an image meme. And new images enter the lexicon through some external source. There's some source in our culture from which it's appropriated and used as a meme. And just an image is actually still a hold-on parton with the two pieces in it. But the two pieces, instead of being an image and text, are image and the cultural context. Now, this is just a reminder of that hold-on parton, what that hold-on chart looks like. What is a hold-on, right? It's this combination of two things. So in this case, the idea is this NPC meme. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the NPC, it stands for non-player character. These are the computer-controlled characters in adventure games that have a general program that they're following. You know, they're running into the wall, or they're trading with you, and that's all they do. They're like a machine. And so this idea in culture is that people are making fun of other people for accepting their cultural programming without any reflection. This is this idea. So really, the NPC meme is a combination of the image itself, the literal pixels there, and the wider cultural context. Now, here's an example of a new meme that came into the lexicon. This is actually the original meme. This is a quote from the television show Archer from 10 years ago, where there's somebody leaving a donut in the office of the spy agency, and he says, "Do you want ants? This is how we get ants." That's the original quote. So they made this, this is the original meme coming in with the original quote, and Archer's face making his poker face there. It's a two-part structure, as you can see. It's the combination of the image and words. In this case, the new one, they go together very well because it's an original quote. But here we see the variation, right? Here's the evolutionary algorithm at work. Do you want to continue to perpetuate problems with centralized bodies of control? Because this is how get that. So Archer themselves and the writers actually use that as a meme in their show, where they come back to it once again, repeating and recurring. But meanwhile, the wider internet culture appropriated it as well, and they've made this variation where they use the same picture, vary the words. You guys are all very familiar with these things. But the words are optional, of course. Coming back to the Richard Dawkins meme, I didn't explain this that much earlier, but this is actually a photograph of Richard Dawkins. And he coined the term meme, and he's now in a meme about memes. So this is an example of recursion. Recursion is self-reference. Yeah, it's known as a meta meme. That's right, thank you. Because it's a meme about a meme, right? And memes do this a lot. Culture is all about self-reference, referring to each other. It's playing with frames of reference. Image memes very much play with frames of reference quite a lot. So here's a little joke about recursion. One does not simply understand recursion without understanding recursion. So it's referring to itself, making a sort of logical cycle. Easy to get trapped in those, you've got to watch out. Constant play with a frame of reference. Theme and variation, right? So theme and variation, the theme is a recursion, but it's not always exactly the same. That's the variation. You can use imitation. You imitate, but slightly change. And remember that that's a process of time. So this idea of cultural evolution, where the memes change through time, recursion involves time too. You can't come back to something later unless you've got time. And commenting on things is a form of recursion too, because you're once again referring to something with your comments. And the internet very much lends itself to that type of process. Here's a little meme that is a literally self-referential meme. A recursive meme is self-referential. Self-referential meme is recursive. And here's possibly the ultimate in recursive memes. What if I told you to tell me that I should tell you what if I told you? A little bit breaking the, it's like a Mobius strip in words, right? Hofstadter talked about that a lot in the 70s. It's very essential for computer science, recursion. Things have to be able to loop on themselves, and but if you program it wrong, you can get your computer in quite a tussle. And that's when you get that blue screen of death or the spinning wheel of death where the computer's like stuck in a cycle and it can't get out because it's not a human being. We can jump up a semantic level and say, oh, that cycle was bad, cancel it. Sometimes a computer can't do that. So, jumping from recursive memes out to the wider society a little bit. So this is the Doge meme. It's just a cute, what's this type of dog called? Does anyone remember? Shiba Inu. The Shiba Inu dog is actually reversed. So they reversed the actual picture of the Doge, as they call it. And yeah, so now you're the meme, right? That's a great meme because it really brings together, it's recurring with the viewer and the viewed object. So this is playing on, of course, the I wish I could go back to 2009 in my time machine and buy Bitcoin, but this is a little joke, once again, another meta meme about, instead of wanting to go back and buy it, you want to go back and meme about it before everybody else. Here's an attacking meme, right? The Bitcoiners are critical of fiat money. So Grandpa Simpson on the Simpsons show represents a very conservative, change-averse mindset. So of course he's used on any meme where change-averse money was made. Back in my day, money was made of paper, and you got it from the government with debt. He's complaining of this Bitcoin thing, changing it up. Here's a nice meme with one hanged little guy trying to help the other. Meanwhile, the other one's not trying to help him. So fiat's printing and printing and printing, helping Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's just undermining from the whole way. Another attacking meme there. So here's a simple meme. The image here is just a guy speaking. So it's not too complicated, probably not reused that many times, but get a little picture of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan. You're wasting your time with Bitcoin. Bitcoin alternative patent rejected 175 times. So this is pointing out the hypocrisy. Here's another classic meme. It's a great fence. You gotta love the kid with that great gesture. It's like so evocative. And then government banning Bitcoin. You can put anything on. So you reused thousands and thousands of times, but it's a good one. They try to ban Bitcoin. I'm just gonna walk around it now. Okay, bye. I have my Bitcoin. Here's another classic meme of the exploding mind blow, right? All right, that's my mic drop. Hello. So Bitcoin digital asset. This is a recursive one, right? So it doesn't just blow up to a fourth level. It actually repeats. Bitcoin is a digital asset. Bitcoin is a revolution. Bitcoin is a religion, a drug, a virus. Notice virus, right? That's a type, like a meme, cultural meme. Bitcoin is a digital asset again. It's like, oh wait, you come back to it. And that's often how it is with paradigm shifting memes, that you understand them at different semantic levels and it can kind of repeat in a cycle. Here's a nice little word play. Powerless effort, Occupy Wall Street, right? 2010. Didn't do shite. But effortless power with Bitcoin. Powerless effort, effortless power. So here's Occupy Wall Street type of meme person. This is this great hippie picture that's just so classic. It gets used in a lot of memes. And wants unregulated currency, thinks the government should help when it gets stolen. So this is like pointing out a contradiction in leftist ideology where you're liberal about some laws, but then other ones you're kind of authoritarian. So it's pointing out a contradiction. This is not as much of a meme as just a straight up cartoon, but of course a cartoon can become a meme too. Thinking putting some money into Bitcoin, know anything about it? Well, that would be a very risky venture. Bitcoin is quite volatile. It's a virtual currency controlled by shadowy people in an unregulated environment without any real guarantee of return. You never know when the value will drop and be forced down by nefarious forces or money stolen by unscrupulous low-life scum. So how is that different than the regular banking system or the stock market? When you use Bitcoin, I can't charge you fees. Little attacking me there. Here's another attacking meme. This is Bitcoin. Well, we've been saying this since the beginning, really. Since I came online in 2014, is when this meme came out. Once again, meme, right? A cultural meme that the banksters came up with their attack. They were like, well, this Bitcoin thing, we got to try to attack it socially because there's no other way to attack it. It's specifically designed to avoid being shut down. So we're going to say that the underlying technology is really the important part, and we're going to like appropriate it for our regular banking. Meanwhile, Thomas and I and everybody else on the World Crypto Network and many other people online were like, actually, you totally have that wrong. Blockchain is actually just an inefficient database, and if we didn't have to use it, we wouldn't, because it's really slow and ineffectual unless you want to make something that can't be shut down or changed at all by anybody, any single person or single entity, in which case it's a necessary evil. And really what you want is a valued asset that people have to work really hard for, which is exactly what you'll never do, banksters. Little Pulp Fiction meme there. Bitcoin is better than Dogecoin. So now this is a Dogecoin meme where they're attacking Bitcoin. Dogecoin is a coin that's based off of a meme. It's a crypto shitcoin that was created specifically based off of that doggy, Shiba Inu meme, and they created this crypto, and so they're attacking Bitcoin here with the SpongeBob meme. And once again, there's the Shiba Inu. Here's another Dogecoin meme where they're attacking Bitcoin. You always got jokes. Well, take away the memes, and what are you? That's us, Bitcoiners saying that to Dogecoin. Fast, stable, secure crypto with low transaction fees, dedicated devs, and a charitable community. They're defending this the shitcoin, but really, I wouldn't say it's stable. That's the typical shitcoin chart of pumps and dumps, fast pumps, slow dumps. Here's a little meme from the shitcoin world: decentralize all the things. Now, I actually think we should, but this has kind of been used to perpetuate a lot of fraud, and. It was used a lot, the decentralize all the things, very popular Ethereum meme. This is a thing called the Meme Factory. It's built on top of Ethereum, and it consists of two different tokens on the Ethereum blockchain. One is an ERC 721. That's a non-fungible collectible. So it's basically you're making a meme and registering it on Ethereum. And then there's this thing called dank, which is, because dank memes are good memes. This is the slang, right? Dank memes. So they've also made an ERC20, which is a tradable token called dank. And then basically it's like a game where you're voting on whether you like a meme or something, and you vote dank or stank. And this is literally from their website. The example that they gave is the dildo rocket meme. I'm assuming this is their example meme for voting. It's some ridiculous. So instead of making a world-changing currency or world-changing digital money to completely upend and make the world fair and fix the world's economy, they're making a game about voting for memes. That's Ethereum. Here's an Ethereum price meme from Reddit from a year ago. Got any more of them sub $500 Ethereum? Like, they're so hard to get at under 500. Just like that, I'll never get to buy Ethereum at 300 ever again. And then there's the chart. That was about there. No problem. I don't think you're gonna have any trouble finding sub 500 meme. This is Ethereum versus Bitcoin. Well, I mean, it's price charts, pick and choose, but still, it's funny. This apparently last year, it's Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum, complained on Twitter about there's too many price memes. Everyone's only talking about price, and I'm gonna leave if you don't. And then of course the price tanked because people were like, oh no, the dear leader is gonna leave us, and this is terrible. He's gonna leave because he's upset at our memes. And then he's like, wait, no, I won't stop. Whoa. He backed up. He reversed, his comment here, and then the price recovered. So that's how it shows how delicate and fragile it is, and dependent on this central guy. So here's a attacking meme on Ethereum, incorruptible, irreversible. Unless we screw up coding, then we fork and bail ourselves out, which happened in 2016. And here's an excellent, I love this. This is Dan Darkpill created this. This is no words, but it is combining a beautiful painting of the Pope with Vitalik Buterin's face and the Ethereum logo, and of course the little fork edict, right? He's saying, "We will fork now. I'm telling you." This is that. It says so much. It's, pictures worth 1,000 words. It's just great. I love that's so much more subtle than sometimes when you don't have any words. And here's a little cartoon again, not a regular meme or image meme. And so this is pointing out the contradiction or the conflict between hard money, the yap stones of the islanders. They made these really difficult to make big heavy stones, and that was money for them because it was hard to make, just like gold's hard to dig out of the ground. And here's Vitalik describing how Ethereum works to the very skeptical islanders. And here's the guy that, I guess that's a picture of the guy that put millions of dollars worth of Ethereum in a smart contract and didn't get to audit. They didn't audit the code properly and they got hacked. This was the fork before the fork. He asked them to cover his mistake. They did. If Ethereum forks to censor certain contract code, doesn't that make it Turing incomplete? So in the beginning, Ethereum was billing itself as a computing platform that was Turing complete, meaning it's a universal machine that can compute anything, just like your processor, but distributed throughout the world. But then they decided to roll back the chain, so that's definitely not a universal machine, because then a person is actually changing it up. So this is the dinosaur meme, the thinking dinosaur meme. So this is an important point here. What is the reason why some of these memes get chosen or live on and some don't? And what are we talking about here? The contradiction, in between Turing incomplete, complete, or saying, oh, we're immutable, but then changing it. These are fallacies. This is a great website. It's called yourlogicalfallacyis.com, and they let you click on each one. 4 of these are really common in crypto, and you really should watch out. But let's just go through each of these icons briefly. The straw man, very, very common when you're attacking, to misrepresent your opponent's argument. The false cause, that's oftentimes mistaking causation, correlation for causation. So seeing, oh, this and that went together, so that means A caused B. Well, it could just be A and B happen to be existing together. They're not necessarily cause a causative relationship. The appeal to emotion, that's really strong, like, oh, get in now, The fallacy, this is a little fractal thing. Fallacy, like, well, that's a fallacy, so it's a fallacy, it's kind of a circular argument there. Loaded question, that's like, well, do you like money? Do you want to stop all of your problems now? Or there's a lot of loaded questions. The slippery slope, of course, is saying, well, if we go there, then we're definitely going to go. If we go step A and B, well, then C is guaranteed. Not necessarily. Got the ad hominem. That's like, well, your idea is not good because you suck. Tu quoque. That's like, well, you're accusing me, so you're wrong. Loaded question. Special pleading. That's like, well, no, but not for me, right? And burden of proof, that's a good one. It says that, well, I don't need to prove it, you did. Well, you're trying to sell me something, so yeah, you need to prove it. Ambiguity, that's a really, really big one in crypto because of the technical nature of the subject. Oftentimes, it's easy to perpetuate fraud by obscurity through complexity. Ethereum, any white paper project is generally going to be guilty of that. They're trying to trick you, and Tone Vase is a great person to follow when he debunks things. He likes to analyze the white papers and show, well, actually here they're taking 9/10 of everything. They're hiding it in this big white paper that's 17 pages long, but actually this paragraph shows you everything you need to know. They're taking it all. Let's see here. Composition division fallacy. That's really good. Well, I won't bother pointing out which is which. Saying that the part and the whole are the same when not necessarily the case. Appeal to purity, no true Scotsman fallacy. The genetic fallacy is saying, oh, well, it came from there, so it has to be bad. Black and white fallacy, that's showing that because it's not this, it has to be wrong. Begging the question, that's when you assume something as the answer before you ask it. Appeal to nature, says, well, nature, this is the natural way, so it has to be right. Anecdotal fallacy, it happened once, so it has to happen every time. Texas sharpshooter, that's kind of the opposite, where you're like, well, this particular case, it's not going to be a problem. And the middle ground fallacy, that's a really big one, and we're going to be talking about that in a second. Middle ground says, oh, well, A and B are two extremists, so it has to be A.5. Or one and two are two extremists, but 1.5, that's right, automatically. So, coming back to a couple of memes. What if I told you a room full of people in New York literally plan the future of Bitcoin? So this is a really, really dastardly meme. Somebody who didn't know what this was really about might think, oh my God, Bitcoin's centralized and people are controlling it in New York. And actually, this is an extreme straw man fallacy. The room full of people in New York attempting to plan the future of Bitcoin were roundly rejected by the Bitcoin users. And they failed in their big plan to control the future of Bitcoin. It was a very obvious failure, and it's actually possibly the most important event in the history of all Bitcoin that proved that it's decentralized and that a cabal of powerful corporate executives and business owners could not derail the user's desires with Bitcoin. So this is a lying, dastardly meme. Here's just a little social meme for you. Irreverent humor. This is a great meme. The original, I found out, is the confused guy meme. It's this guy, the Japanese anime character, who's like looking at a butterfly. He says, "Is this a pigeon?" And the guy's like, "Oh no!" He's there's a reporter trying to interview him, and he loses his mind. So in this meme, he's always mistaking the butterfly for something else. So then they label the other stuff. So he's Twitter and is looking at the irreverent humor. Is this hate speech? We're going to revisit hate speech again soon. So, this is a term I've come up with, social meme. What is a social meme? So it's any societal element. It's really a social meme. It's, of course, forms a hierarchy like any other meme, cultural meme. Social memes compete with each other. And this word appropriate, I think, is a really effective one when it comes to many cultural memes, but especially social memes. We as individuals decide this meme is something I want to appropriate because it's appropriate to my life. It's better, quote unquote, for my life, for me. Examples of social memes: any political system is a social meme. Socialism, anarcho-capitalism, anything. Religions, each one of those is a social meme. It gets passed on through time, altered, changed, changed back. Fashion trends. I'm obviously not quite following a fashion trend, it's maybe my own thing, but fashion trends are social memes. Art, music, architecture, literature, any movement in those type of areas of culture is a social meme. Storytelling, types of stories, heist movies, for example, or the Money Heist. You guys know this Spanish television show? It's great. They actually rip off, they take over the Royal Mint in Madrid and start printing up euros. That was their whole plan. So they're not stealing money, they're taking over the actual money creation. This is great. That's a very potent meme because everybody knows, even if they're not Bitcoiner, people know intuitively something's not fair about our money system, even if they don't know quite what it is, like maybe we do in this room. Storytelling meme, heists. Business structures, corporations. This is a social meme that's only been around a few hundred years. Corporations, different types of business structures. Commercial brands. If you're a business owner and your brand becomes a social meme, you're stoked. Entertainment memes. There's all sorts of different types of live shows. What are those things they have now? It's a social meme for sure. Escape rooms, right? Stuff like that. Idea or statement under 280 characters. Tweets, of course, are social memes. They're very compact ones. Money systems are social memes. Bitcoin, of course, is a meme. Fiat, central banking, is a social meme. Philosophies. Stoic philosophies. Roman era philosophy is really making a lot of comeback now because of times now are starting to feel a little bit more like Roman times. Pop science, pop psychology are very social memes where people talk about, you should meditate or wake up early or whatever it is. Pop science, drink 7 glasses of water at 9 a.m. Dating, courtship memes. My friend went to a pickup workshop, or let's go, and I'm not having sex till marriage. Whatever. Food memes, right? We'll watch these TV shows and man, did you see the peppercorn steak? What is this? 1970s restaurant menu? What is it's an old meme or it's super nouveau or reservations at Dorsia. History memes. We look at history through these different lenses, and the 19th century, 20th century, 19th century seemed very old-fashioned, but now, kind of the 21st century, we're kind of like, well, geez, they had hard money back then, and they had these beautiful, opulent buildings, and they're so great, and they're made out of stone and last forever, and all this crappy architecture from the mid-20th century is actually very backward. Ethics, it's we have these different ideas. 500 years ago, or even in the Roman times, slavery was just a part of life, and if you got caught on the high seas, you were just going to become a slave, and the Roman, there wasn't a place where there was no slavery, and then suddenly, nowadays, it's like, wow, man, there's a lot of slaves, and it's just horrible, we're all trying to fight it. Things change over time. But why? Why do we select certain memes? We're talking about them being appropriate, but what the hell does that mean, and how do we decide if something's appropriate? See, this is on a separate track here. So here we have Guilfoyle from Silicon Valley. I mean, if you're the CEO of a company and you're dumb enough to leave your login on a post-it on your desk while the people you just ripped off are physically in your building, then it's not a hack, it's barely social engineering. It's more like natural selection. So natural selection is this idea of the survival of the fittest. And in a sense, memes compete. Even though we're choosing them, they do compete with each other. People choose them based on their qualities. It's not random. More competitive memes survive. That's cultural evolution. The better the meme, the more people choose it, the more it lives on, the more it gets varied and influences everything around it and everything after it. So finally, what is Bitcoin? What does the Bitcoin mean? This is a cartoon from a few years back, Daniel Kravis. Bitcoin is a social meme. So Bitcoin is a part of culture. Of course, first and foremost, it's an invention. It's a tool. It's not just an invention, it's something we use. Human beings use it. It's also a system. It has a sort of a momentum of its own. It's a protocol, a technical protocol which different people, different machines, different things use to communicate with each other. It's a communications protocol. And other than being an invention, it's also a social phenomenon and movement. In that sense, it connects to all the rest of culture. And it's also a memeplex. It's a holarchy. It's not just one thing, it's a combination of many different ideas. So, here's my loose idea of a social meme hierarchy. Bitcoin is a holarchy. The little circles are nodes. They're basically social memes that combine to make Bitcoin meme. The arrows are kind of loosely, this is not complete, there's no such thing as a complete holarchy chart because of course it connects to everything else in the world. But I've kind of picked a few different things here. The time scale, so the oldest stuff is on the bottom. Math, it's been around a long time, thousands of years. Libertarian political theory, been around for centuries as well. Freedom-oriented thought. You can see the arrows are tracking the influence. Math informs game theory. Math and game theory both inform computer science, cryptography. Now you see a lot of arrows in between here because these affect each other a lot. There's double arrowheads here. Just kind of trying to give the idea that these fields have been influencing each other quite a lot. And then finally you get up to software and free and Libre open source software, FLOSS. This is this idea of software that's not only free to use and download, but it's also free in the sense that it encourages freedom in society. That's Libra. Floss. And then, of course, that directly influenced Bitcoin, game theory. Now, game theory, it's arguable. People complain, oh, it's not strictly whatever. It's just a loose chart here. But yeah, so Bitcoin is influenced by Austrian economics, libertarian political theory. Combine these elements together, boom, Bitcoin. Once again, older stuff, newer. Bitcoin newest in this chart, okay? This is my loose chart of the Bitcoin hierarchy. So let's expand the chart a little bit and add in sort of what we consider to be the competing system to Bitcoin. Totally separate chart over there, my hierarchy, just 3 nodes. Authoritarian political theory. This could be, you could consider it left or right, they're both authoritarian. The Nazis were the perfect marriage of the two. No, national socialism, nationalist and socialist. Authoritarian political theory directly influenced Keynesian economics, and then you get 20th century central banking. Now, central banking did exist before that, but really it wasn't perfected until the 20th century when they had this sort of academic thought behind it, like, oh, we can control the money supply and make everybody's lives better. I swear we won't steal everybody's money through the Cantillon effect. So it's 2 charts here. We got the Bitcoin hierarchy there, and we've got the central banking. Now, why aren't they connected? Right? Why aren't they connected? They're totally different systems. The reason is because there's a conflict. The conflict is not with math. Keynesian economics uses math. I could have made an arrow there. Oh, I got the laser. I could have made an arrow here. Keynesian economics uses math, but it's just all fallacious bullshit. The real conflict here is between libertarian political theory and authoritarian political theory. They're directly opposed. That's what this actually is a standard symbol for contradiction. You cannot combine them without a fallacy. You will create a fallacy if you say, everybody can do what they want as long as they don't impinge on others' rights, on one side, and if you also say, I should be able to tell everybody else what to do, they do not go together, you can't combine them. Okay, that's clear. 2 different hierarchies, they're not connected. Once again, you're creating a fallacy by combining them. In this case, what is that? Oh my God, this is huge. Oh, this is great. Stand up here. This is great. This is great. So, so there's a middle ground fallacy. Well, libertarian political theory is great, but a little bit of authoritarian political theory is cool too, right? So then that's a middle ground fallacy, right? Classic. All right. So this. I accept this the Bitcoin standard bearer title temporarily, but so coming back, here's the chart. There's the conflict. Now let's move on to another idea. Ripple XRP. Once again, here's the Bitcoin. Is that right? Oh, I'm holding it backward, that's all. Okay. Yeah. There's the conflict, there's the fallacies, coming back. Okay, Ripple. Here's my Ripple hierarchy chart. So, what we have here is free Libra open source software. Okay, the XRP standard is a protocol. It's an open software protocol, totally directly influenced by free open source software. Anybody can create software built on top of it. Cool, they're borrowing that. Great. Central banking directly influences XRP. The Ripple Foundation is the sole issuer of the XRP token, quote-unquote, currency. It's very influenced by central banking, this idea of a central issuer. Keynesian economics. They get to choose when they want to issue it and how. They might say, we're never going to do it, but they're the ones that hold the button, so you got to trust them. If there's trust, it's Keynesian. And they're planning to probably have an inflation rate forever. So as you can see here, we've got a problem because there's a contradiction that creates a fallacy at the bottom. And Ripple is assuming that we can combine free Libra open source software with central banking without any conflicts, without any fallacies. But this is my dotted lines, right? The dotted lines mean that it's not solid. What is that based on? There's 2 competing philosophies at the base which have a contradiction. And this is why Bitcoiners have a big problem with it and don't believe that it can succeed. because there's a fallacy at the base. Moving on to Ethereum. Slightly different chart. The resolution to the contract. Well, as you can see here, Ethereum actually has a lot more game theory in it. It's less centralized. It doesn't have a central bank, really, but it definitely has Keynesian economics because they're planning an inflation rate over a long time. It's more centralized than Bitcoin, but it does have a blockchain, so it's got direct influence from Bitcoin, and it's got miners. Once again, there's something that needs to resolve that middle ground fallacy, and I think it's unicorns and rainbows. There isn't a way to resolve the central contradiction between authoritarian and libertarian political theory. There is no, it's -1 and 1. That's it. So, coming back to why we choose these memes. Why are some good and some suck and some shit and some awesome and the ones that we just gotta get right away? Well, they have strengths and weaknesses. They're dynamic. Things change through time. The context changes. The meme itself gets selected and varied. Good meme is appropriate. The via negativa. Via negativa is the negative way. It's deciding what something ain't rather than what it is. And it's very, very useful sometimes to reverse course like that and say, well, what isn't this? Well, Bitcoin isn't a thing that people can make out of thin air. That can help people understand it, faster than saying, oh, it's this protocol, blah, blah, blah. It lacks fallacies. A good meme doesn't have contradictions built into it. It doesn't have these guys. Always, when you're choosing which memes to bring into your life, to bring into your mind, to give mind share to, always look for those fallacies. And if they've got a fallacy, point it out and don't pick it up. These things, when you're deciding on which ones of these to bring into your life, examine them, make a hierarchy chart, or just think about it. What's influencing this particular courtship ritual? Things shift through time. It's more relevant. We're moving into a multipolar world where eventually we're going to have these individuals, communicating with each other atomically. We're not going to be these blocks of nations. It's going to be we're dissolving. So how does that affect all of these social memes? It affects everything. And there will be great shifts in food. Just like we're seeing, with Bitcoin carnivory, this sort of demonized food source that human beings have been eating for millions of years. It's very important to investigate the bases of social memes when you're deciding. So here's my little analysis of the hate speech. I told you I was going to come back. Just wanted to throw together some more hierarchies for you guys to think about. Once again, the basis here is between libertarian political theory and authoritarian political theory. And of course, authoritarians believe that they should be able to control what people say. Libertarians believe that people should be able to say whatever they want. That's clear. Free speech, limited speech. Hate speech, I actually place hate speech squarely in authoritarian political theory. This idea of an authority deciding that is hate speech. You're expressing hate and you can't say that. Pure authoritarianism. But it's not quite as strong as the ones to the right. Political speech, so say to controlling political speech, you can't say that because of the political implication. That's a little bit even stronger. And then the most strong is saying you can't say that because it's quote unquote offensive. So that's the fallacy there is what's it called? False cause. The cause of somebody's reaction is their own reaction. Is a subconscious decision to react. So it's calling your speech offensive and you're totally to blame for that person's reaction is extremely fallacious. Now I put in the center here crying wolf. This is this idea of the fire in the theater, right? It's in between free speech and limited speech where you say, well, that's kind of the gray zone. That's a bit of a gray area there, but it's not strong. There's no rules about it. And to say, well, that was dangerous speech and this isn't, is a judgment call, and that's why it's in dashed lines. And that's why it doesn't have, the idea of crying wolf does not have strength like these other bubbles. The nodes are legitimized by their bassist, but since there's a contradiction at the root, once again, doesn't stand. Here is my house music hierarchy. I'm a DJ and produced house music for many years, so it's something I know pretty well. I've studied music as well in school, so I have a graduate experience in school, and so analytically. So this is actually just a music genre hierarchy chart. And once again, time is going from bottom to top. So you have here at the basis, African song and dance on one side, and European classical music, European popular music on the other side. They're not connected to each other, of course, they're from different continents, very different traditions, very, very different. And you combine them, you get blues and Latin music down south, blues goes to jazz, and then you have a lot of interaction between rock and roll, soul, R&B from jazz, soul to funk, 60s to 70s, right? 70s you had funk directly into disco, that kick drum on every beat, and as you can see, Western pop music has lots of influences from all of those. It's kind of different color because it's a little bit bigger. And of course, disco, house is really just electronic disco. It's a direct move straight to disco. But then you go back and forth between house and Western pop music. So that's what's going on there. I just wanted to make this chart really to explain that one of the reasons why house music and all these other styles work, the black and the Western pop music, why they work is because there's no inherent contradiction between these totally different styles of African song and dance and European classical music. They're completely different, but there's no contradiction there. You can combine them. They're just music styles. There's no such thing as a logical contradiction between most art generally. I mean, sometimes you can have, if you have an art form that is that has a philosophy that's extremely strong, like Dogma 95 or something, and then you can say, well, this film is, contradictory, to combine them is fallacious, but generally not. It's too nebulous with culture and with art. So you can mix them, no problem. Handshake, boom. Mix them, it's actually even better, because hybrid vigor, right? It's these wonderful rhythms with these cool, complex harmonies. Fantastic. 20th century music in the West, it's great. Combination of African and European. So coming back to Bitcoin, here's my Bitcoin hierarchy again. And I wanted to actually, this is a more structural hierarchy. So this is not the social meme of Bitcoin, but this is the technical meme. And I wanted to talk about the social meme from my buddy Ansel Lindner, who was, I appeared on the web with back in 2014. Great speaker. He has a great podcast, Bitcoin and Markets. And he asked me on Twitter, when I posted a little hierarchy chart on Twitter, he asked me for this. So I actually stripped out just the social meme parts of my technical meme there. That's right there. As you can see, it's a direct line. And fleshing it out with a few more elements from Bitcoin culture. This is totally not complete, and feel free to come up to me afterward and add some more. But as you can see, Encanto, which is the works of Nassim Taleb, very influential on Bitcoin. Austrian economics, libertarian political theory, anarchism, very close there. Sound money, Stoic philosophy, entrepreneurship is very much related to Bitcoin. Carnivory, as you can see, it's a bit farther away because it's less closely related, but still related. Twitter in general, I mean, just as a social meme, as a way to communicate, sort of microblogging is very, Bitcoin and Twitter kind of, and it's no wonder that Jack, whatever his face, the owner of Twitter or CEO is very into Bitcoin. And then life hacking in general, like, oh, well, I want to be able to save better. Perfect, Bitcoin, you've hacked your life better with Bitcoin. So, in conclusion, I gotta catch up my computer now, because they're out separate.
What is Floss?
Floss, once again, is free Libra open source software, meaning that it's not only free to download and use, but it also encourages freedom in society. Libra. So, in conclusion, share memes, make memes, create memes, combine memes, play with memes, and of course, most importantly, be a meme.
All right, thank you so much, Gabriel, for that great speech on memes. I especially enjoyed the memes about recursion. I especially enjoyed the memes about recursion.
Did you enjoy the memes about recursion?
Only the ones about recursion. I also like that you covered the logical fallacies. You went through my favorite one, no true Scotsman, where you just create a group and you say, no true Scotsman would wear a shirt like that. No true Bitcoiner would buy an altcoin, and you just define the group as whatever you're not. No true Bitcoiner would not wear a hat. They'd all have hats. So I just love a no true Scotsman.